Welcome, everybody, to the next episode of the How Rich Coaches Think Summit. Thank you all for being here. The objective of this summit is just by enjoying these conversations, listening to them, watching these videos, your whole perception, the way you think about money, the way you think about becoming a wealthy coach will automatically get upgraded and transform. That's my objective for us. And in that vein, I was very careful selecting which speakers we would hear from. And one of literally top of my list of people when it comes to thinking and coaching and money, I was like, I need to get Jamie Smart in here. So I'm going to give you Jamie's official bio, and then I'm going to share one or two personal things about him. And this is being recorded, so I'll make sure they're really embarrassing personal things. So Jamie Smart is a Sunday Times bestselling author, speaker, and coach. He shows high-impact professionals and leaders how to bring the principles behind clarity into their work with clients, into their own organizations, and into every aspect of their lives. He's appeared on Sky TV and on the BBC, as well as in numerous publications, including The Times, The Daily Telegraph, The Huffington Post, and Psychology's magazine. And recently, he did a keynote speech on clarity and strategy to military and civilian staff at the NATO Defense College. Wow, you are quite famous, aren't you, Jamie?
Micro famous.
Yeah. Me too. I'm super famous if you happen to be on my email list and open my emails.
Yeah,
otherwise
there you
you've
go.
never heard of me. So let me tell you something personal about Jamie. So the reason that I knew he would be literally one of, if not the best person in the world to have talking on this topic, is that Jamie Smart completely changed my life one day before we even, I think it was the very first time we met, and it was over a phone conversation. We were having a conversation about what Jamie now calls the principles behind clarity. And I was in a pretty funky space and I was beating myself up. I had just been divorced. I was going through some kind of depression and going through a really hard time. And we had a life-changing conversation. Now, when you talk with a coach, you often have life-changing conversations, right? But this was like orders of magnitude different to other, like this wasn't like, oh, I'll add that to my to-do list at the end of the conversation. It wasn't one of those conversations. It was oh, I don't know if my life is ever going to even possibly be the same as what it ever was before. It was an order of magnitude difference. Since then, my coaching business has looked very different and really just become a lot deeper and a lot more powerful for all of my clients. I've gone a lot deeper into my own spiritual tradition, and I became the best-selling author of Inside the Soul of Islam. Hey, look, now I'm doing my own little bio. But a lot of really good things happen in my life from that conversation and then consequently being coached by Jamie. And I think it's going to be wonderful for us to explore that and how it shows up in terms of how we think about wealth and money and having an impact for our clients. And I'm so grateful. I literally pray for Jamie quite regularly, like literally pray for him. Like, God, save his soul. He said, no, like real prayers of gratitude.
I appreciate it. All the prayers I can get, I appreciate
it. They're look at how successful you've become because of my prayers, Jamie. Yeah. I mean, come on. Yeah. So, and obviously now Jamie also has some really awesome things for coaches. He has this thing called the Thriving Coaches Blueprint, which we'll probably talk about at some point. But Jamie, thank you for being here, mate.
Huge pleasure to be here. I've really been looking forward to it.
Yeah. So let's dive straight in because there is something almost like like I said before, an order of magnitude difference between how you think about and talk about the mind and thought versus how a lot of other people talk about it. And that's made a huge difference for me. But I want to keep it linked to money and finances. So let me ask you this. From your perspective with being a super successful coach yourself and helping many, like, I don't know how many hundreds or whatever of coaches, become very successful. What do you think, what does it look like to you what causes financial insecurity? Where does financial insecurity come from? What causes it?
Well, how it looks to me, my answer may be a little bit all over the place, but I will land the plane.
Great.
So if I look at what differentiates successful coaches from coaches who are struggling, and by successful, I don't just mean financially successful, though that's part of it, but people who are having a big impact in the world, they're doing the work they're here to do, they're earning good money, whatever that means to them, and they're feeling good about it and comfortable in their own skin and feeling secure and all that sort of stuff. What differentiates them from the folks who are struggling, who are feeling financially insecure and that sort of thing, isn't that one group have their business working right and the other group don't. Because what you'll often find for all of us, everyone you've ever met who's a successful coach started out not being a successful coach, being a baby coach, being someone who's just getting started. And well, I'll tell you a story actually. So this goes way back to when I was first starting out. Now, first starting my first coaching business, and I used to, I was kind of worried a lot of the time. What if it doesn't work out? What if basically the nature of the worry is, what if I have to go back and get a job again? That was, to me, that was kind of the end of the world. And I bet a lot of people can relate to that. Mm-hmm. And one day I was getting a reflexology session, someone working on my feet. And when I get those, I get into a very, very chilled out kind of space. So I'm in a very, very chilled out space. And it suddenly occurs to me, oh, you're going to be okay. Like whatever happens, you're going to be okay. If you had to go get a job again, it would just be temporary until you can, get back on your feet, and it wouldn't be the same anyway because you're not the same guy that left. And it was just like this sense of, oh yeah, you're going to be okay, no matter what happens. And immediately, my coaching business started becoming more successful because what I'd been carrying around without knowing it was a feeling of insecurity, and that feeling of insecurity, I was attaching it to my bank balance and my coaching business and whether or not I had to go get a job and that sort of thing. Whereas actually it was coming from within. It was coming from within. Like I was feeling basically a set of ideas and beliefs and that sort of thing. And I believed that I was feeling my levels of success and how likely it was to work out and all that sort of stuff. So my kind of starter for 10, if you like, is that, well, let me backtrack a little bit. Mamoon, it looks to me like the two most valuable things anyone can discover, and this is particularly relevant for coaches, is A, how their experience is being created moment to moment, and B, who they really are. So starting with how your experience is being created, it's my assertion that we're living in the experience of what I'm calling the principle of thought taking form in the moment. And this is kind of weird. Like if you hold out your hand in front of you, you can see your hand. But it seems to us like we're looking out through our eyes, like little windows in our head, at a world out there. So we got these windows and we look out and there's the world and that sort of thing. But that's not actually, like this is old school neurology from the 1850s. A guy called Helmholtz first figured this out, that actually data is pouring in through our senses. And then our deeper neurophysiological properties kind of go, what must be out there for me to be experiencing that? And then we make a guess and we create an experiential reality from within. Now, it doesn't seem like that, right? It doesn't seem like that to anyone, but that's what's going on. So we're living in the experience of that internally generated reality, moment to moment. And that's really valuable to know, because is valuable to know for you as a coach, because you're going to be riding that roller coaster of your internally generated reality, but it's also what all your clients are up against as well. So your original question was about insecurity. Insecurity is thought taking form in the moment, and security is thought taking form in the moment. So I'll give a really simple metaphor. Like everyone's either had the experience or seen a kid with a teddy bear or a security blanket or whatever. So, well, I know you've got 2 young children, so the world of security blankets and teddy bears is very real for you, I expect. And it genuine when you give a little child a security blanket, the child or a teddy bear, they hold it to them, and it genuinely seems to the child like their experience of comfort and well-being and security is coming from the bear or the blanket. But as adults, we know that that's not actually what's going on. All of those feelings of security and well-being are coming from within the child. 100% are coming from within the child. 0% is coming from the blanket. And if you go on holiday and you forget to take your kid's security blanket with you and the kid's freaking out, all those feelings of insecurity are coming from within the child, but it seems to them like it's coming from a blanket deficiency or a teddy bear deficiency, right? So it's a trick of the mind. It's a trick of the mind. And we get that with little kids. But then as adults, we have adult teddy bears, and we think it behaves according to different rules, whether those adult teddy bears are money in the bank or, a never-ending flow of clients or a successful business or a partner or a new car or whatever it might be. And my assertion is it's all teddy bears. And I'm not saying those things aren't useful. I mean, money is useful. It's nice to have a partner. There's all kinds of great things in this world. I'm talking about how it works. So my assertion is it's teddy bears all the way down.
Beautifully articulated. And this is the big thing that happened in our first conversation. This is literally what you explained to me. It hit me like a ton of bricks. It was like, blew my mind, and it really sorted a lot of things out for me personally when I first understood it. And it still does, because it's teddy bears all the way down. Yeah. So every time since then that I've been freaking out about something, it's literally just been, oh no, wait, it's teddy bears. Hang on. It's not about the client. It's not about, the money in the bank, as you said. They're all these objects that we are imagining cause our security or our feelings or love or happiness or whatever. Yeah. Beautiful. So the next thing I was going to ask you is why do people worry so much about money, almost in particular? Because I've noticed a lot in the personal growth world, when we share this kind of understanding, this deep realization of, oh yeah, feeling comes from within. Oh yeah, feeling comes from thought. That makes sense. Oh no, but money. Why is that one so weird? Why do people freak out so much about it?
Well, I've never thought about exactly that question, but I'm going to shoot from the hip and see where we go. I saw this wonderful quote. I don't know who it's from, but they said the most powerful technologies become invisible. They get absorbed into the fabric of our reality, and then we treat them as though they are actually reality. Well, money is such a technology. Money is an invention. Right? Like it's a representation, it's a symbol, it's a stand-in for something. So money is an invention that has become absorbed into the fabric of our reality, you could say. So money's kind of interesting, actually, because it's one of those areas where everyone is operating in relation to their beliefs about it, and everyone's beliefs look real to them. So the cool thing about money is it's pretty hard to find to find a consensus agreement on what the truth of money is, right? Like everyone's got their own ideas about it, but everyone's ideas about it and beliefs about it and feelings about it look real to them. So it's like the ultimate kind of Rorschach test. You know, those ink blot tests, you look at it and you see, oh, I see a cloud, or I see an alligator, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Well, money is like this mirror that reflects your beliefs about it back at you. So it's, and so that's one of the things that's worth knowing about money, like just that thing. So here's another thing. As human beings, there's this wonderful quote from, I can't remember who, but it's very pithy. The person who said it said, most people are walking around umbilical cord in hand, looking for somewhere to plug it in. And so I'll never forget it, Mamoon. I had a job for many years. I was first I was a computer operator, a computer programmer, then became a project manager and a program manager. I was always employed, right? So I basically had a gig where someone would put money into my bank account every month, month in, month out, as long as I showed up and did things and that sort of thing. And so there was a way in which my financial umbilical cord was plugged into those companies that I worked for, right? And I always said, you know, if I could figure out what I'd love to do, I would do it, would do whatever it was. And so when I realized that I wanted to be a coach, I literally quit my job 2 weeks later. I sorted out a contract first, like, so I still had a source of income, but I quit my job. And I remember talking to the HR director because he wanted to offer me a bigger job to kind of keep me. And I said, no, you're all right. He said, well, but what about job security? And I said, oh, well, there's no such thing. This was before I even came across the principles, but I instinctively got that there was no such thing as job security because, you know, companies made redundancies and all that sort of stuff. And I said, oh, there's not really any such thing. Like we could get laid off at any time or that sort of thing. And he started getting really uncomfortable. And what I saw was that he was attributing his feelings of security to his employment contract, to his job. And that's natural. It's a natural, normal thing to do, but it's not true. So I think the first thing is that money is like this Rorschach ink blot test that people project whatever their beliefs are. But second, we've kind of been conditioned to believe that the source of our security comes from these financial coupons and or the person who's in charge of deciding whether we get them or not. So whether that person is your boss or whether that person is the government that's paying your checks or whatever it might be. And as soon as we think someone else has control over that, we start being sketchy in relation to them, right? Now, here's the third thing. There's one of my favorite books of all time. It's called Anti-Fragile by a guy called Nassim Taleb. And in that, he tells the story of two taxi drivers. This is before Uber, two brothers, one of whom is a London taxi driver and the other of whom is the HR director for a bank or something. Now, they both pull down about $100,000 a year. They're both pulling in about the same. But the HR director gets it through a salary. Monthly salary comes in. The taxi driver, a London cabbie, gets it like some days he makes a couple of £100, another day he only makes 20 quid, another day he makes 500 quid because he gets a run, up to Leeds or something. So he's got a very variable income. This guy's got a very steady income. But the taxi driver, because he's got lots of different clients, he's not reliant on any one client, whereas the HR director, all it takes is for his boss to decide he doesn't like the cut of his jib and he's out of job. So he's much more fragile. Now, here's the funny thing. And I'm sure you've had this experience as well. The longer I've spent working for myself, learning how to build client relationships, learning about money and finances and how to enroll and all that sort of stuff, the more dispersed my sources of income have become. So I could really upset one client. I wouldn't want to, but that's the risk you run when you're being real with people. I could really upset one client, but I've still got all kinds of other ways that I can generate income. Now, for most of us, we've been schooled in that single source of income way of, so unless people already have an entrepreneurial background, there's every chance that without even realizing it, they've got that idea in their mind that there's one person in charge of or one entity in charge of doling out the magic money coupons, not realizing that all the feelings of security that you've ever experienced came from within you. None of them came from the job. None of them came from the salary. None of them came from your boss or your, pension plan or whatever it might be. Now, again, it's totally natural that we get confused about that. That's normal too. But understanding the truth of how it works really helps you start to cut through what's actually going on here. Because it's, of course, we live in this semantic environment, all the signals coming in from media and friends and family and everyone else telling us how the world works and the way we should feel and think and that sort of thing. As you start to chart your own course, you need to really get clear about what's true, because then you can kind of sift the wheat from the chaff and start making good decisions and that sort of thing. So, wow, long answer, but that's what strikes me today.
Well, so it seems like we're saying that the biggest let me ask you this. So from all of this, what would you say is the biggest mindset shift or shift in perspective that a coach needs, or would be great to have for a coach if they want to not be financially insecure and not be worried about where the next client comes from? What's the big internal shift that they really need to get?
I'm going to give you the biggest one and then a couple of not quite so big ones.
Great.
And the biggest one will also sound like the way outest, most hippie one, but there you go. So there's this quote by Taylor Desjardins, what a name, which I repurpose. So my rephrasing of the quote is, we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're one spiritual being having 7 billion human experiences. And who you really are is that one spiritual being. Now, what I'm effectively saying is that who you really are is consciousness itself. Who you really are is the energy behind life. And what that means is that while your physical body can be, damaged, even a broken finger is pretty uncomfortable, who you really are can't be harmed or damaged in any way. And who you really are is the source of all the security and peace and beauty and joy and love that you've ever experienced and that you ever will experience. And when someone sees that for themselves, this is not something that there's much point kind of telling yourself, but this is something that you can realize for yourself because you have an innate capacity for realization, an innate capacity for bringing your perception more closely in alignment with the truth of reality. So you can realize this for yourself. And as you do, most coaches will have heard the statement, inner locus of control. It's like you realize that the source of your security and peace and well-being is within, it comes from within you. And it's really, really natural, normal that we attribute it outside ourselves. That's a trick of the mind, but you realize that it comes from within you. So I think that that's the most valuable thing a person can discover. Now, here's the thing. All the spiritual traditions throughout history have said the same thing. And people have often gone like for 20-year pilgrimages, or, silent retreats month after month, or, fasting or whatever, to try and have that realization. So that's why the other thing I say is, I'll say the two most valuable things you can discover are that, who you really are, and how experience is created. Because what I've found is that as people look into the 100% nature of thought and feeling, the teddy bear factor that we referred to earlier, they start having insights into who they really are. So it's sort of like it's a way in. And funnily enough, the guy who has massively influenced my thinking on this is a fellow called Sydney Banks, who died about 14 years ago. But he insightfully realized that there are principles behind our psychological functioning. And so that's at the basis of this, the realization that we're living in the experience of the principle of thought taking form in the moment. And you start looking at that, just seeing where your experience is coming from, and you're going to have insights into who you really are. So that piece, that looks like the number one kind of thing.
Okay. Now I agree 100%, because that literally was the number one thing that changed my life as a human being and as a coach and everything. And connect the dots for me a little bit. So I have this incredible spiritual experience. I realize I am one with all that is, and experience is created one way, and all of my feelings are coming via the principle of thought in the moment. All this freaking sounds amazing. What the heck has that got to do with where my next client is coming from?
Got it. Okay, let me go to entirely the other end of the telescope.
Yes.
So I've started at one end of the telescope. We're going to go to the other end of the telescope, and then we're going to join the dots in between.
Beautiful.
Let's go to the other end of the telescope. And this is something I see lots of programs on how to fill your coaching practice and that sort of thing. But this one thing gets overlooked again and again and again. And when I tell you this, it's going to be so obvious to anyone listening. It's going to be incredibly obvious. So it looks super obvious to me that coaching is a relationship business. It's a relationship business. And there are two things you have to have before a client's going to hire you. So number one, they've got to know you and like you and trust you. Mm-hmm. Now, how do you get someone to know you and like you and trust you? Well, one way is you can trick them. But I've worked with a lot of coaches over the years, and I haven't met any coach that wants to build a business based on tricking people, because almost every coach I meet, it cares about people and is real and authentic, and they want to make a difference in people's lives. Well, you don't do that by tricking people. So right. The other way you can develop a trusted advisor relationship is by being trustworthy. By doing what you say you'll do, by being real with people and straight. So before someone will, certainly like in my coaching practice, I never have more than 6 clients. So I call it the 6-client coaching model. So people are paying me large 5-figure sums to work with me typically over the course of a year. And someone's not going to pay me £50,000 unless they really, really know me and like spending time with me and trust me. So that has to be there. So that's the first thing that has to be there. And here's the funny thing. That has to be there for someone to pay you $50,000 to work with you. But it also has to be there for them to pay you $75 to work with you. Like, you're not going to open your heart to someone and share your innermost secrets or whatever if you don't know them and like them and trust them. You have to have that. And here's the other thing. In my experience, it takes the same amount of time to build the level of knowing and liking and trusting that someone needs to sign up with you for $1,000 as it does for $100,000. It's the same. You have to have that relationship. So that's the first thing that has to be there. Second thing that has to be there is your client has to be present to some result that matters to them, some goal they want to achieve, some problem they want to solve, some change they want to make, some transformation they want to experience. And they've got to know that you can deliver the goods in relation to that.
Mm.
So how does that connect up? Well, one of the things I've seen again and again with coaches, especially when they're first starting out, is they're having an enrollment conversation. So coaching is a relationship business, and you build those relationships through conversations. Now, those conversations can be happening like we're having now. You might eavesdrop on a conversation in a podcast or an interview or a webinar or whatever. Those conversations can be face-to-face. Those conversations can be on Zoom. They can be over a phone. They can be written. But one way or another, it takes conversations to build those relationships. And as human beings, we're picking up on where the person we're in conversation with is coming from. So if I'm sitting down, I'll give you an example. One of my clients, a guy called Nick Jarvis, he actually very kindly, he's one of my 1-year clients. He agreed for me to interview him publicly about his experience of being enrolled as a client, because I saw that a lot of coaches had ideas about what goes on in an enrollment conversation, but it was an opportunity to get the client's perspective on it. Mm. And he said, some of the things he said were, the experience was really enjoyable. I learned stuff in it and made a difference to me. But the other thing he said is there was no sense at any point that I needed anything from him. Mm-hmm. And what I see a lot of coaches struggling with, and I understand it, right? They're trying to get their practice off the ground. They're trying to, pay their bills and be successful and that sort of thing. And they're kind of putting that on their clients or their prospective client. So this is going to sound a weird way of putting it, but they're looking for their client to give them something that can only come from within them. Like they're looking for their client to give them a feeling of security, or to validate that they're a good coach, or to pay their mortgage, or to make them feel successful or whatever. Well, all those things can only come from within you. And here's the thing, I've worked with people who are outwardly very successful. They've built successful businesses and stuff, yet they're not feeling that stuff. So they're still coming across as needy. So right. If you're looking to your client to give you something that can only come from within you, and among other things, I would count security, peace, well-being, a feeling of successfulness, those kinds of things. They can only come from within you. They can't come from your client. But if you don't know that, it's going to be challenging.
Right. And what I love about this is you've just pinpointed. See, I think a lot of people get that needy coach, salesy person isn't going to go down well with any clients, and it's not going to help you get clients. I maybe it was you that I heard this from, but I've heard it and said it and taught it a lot, that basically being needy is, maybe it was Ben Sell, it might have been you, but it was like basically being needy is like, you know how you have like mosquito repellent spray?
Oh, client repellent. Yeah, that was me.
Spraying yourself with client repellent. I was like, oh my God, that's so true. And there are a lot of really successful coaches, including some of the people that have been on this seminar, that have pointed out neediness is like, it's a killer. I mean, Don't even bother trying to make a sale if you're needy, because it'll just be horrible for the client, even if it works, and it doesn't work. But it seems like you just pinpointed the difference between neediness and actual non-neediness, security, peace, well-being. And I think everyone unanimously in the audience, myself included, which would you rather have, and which would you rather be? Needy, slimy, salesy coach, or completely non-needy? Oh, I have stuff you can buy if you want. Right?
Well, and here's the other thing that relates to that, Mamoon. Well, I'll tell you a story actually that'll demonstrate it. The very first time I ran my Thriving Coaches Blueprint program, there was a coach on it called Pete Bryceland. And Pete, I've interviewed Pete about this whole thing. He was a very good coach and doing coaching and therapy and NLP and that sort of thing, very good at what he did. but he'd made less than 20 grand in the year prior to joining me. He was struggling, and he was, charging by the hour and doing a bunch of things that just make it tough to build a business. And he had been experimenting with enrolling clients on packages, but what would happen was he would have a really great enrollment conversation with them, really feeling connected, feeling close to them, all that sort of stuff. And then when it came time to talk with them about money and payment and prices and that sort of thing, he got all uncomfortable. So that's when the insecurity would kick in, and he would start feeling insecure. Well, guess what? The client would pick up on that. They would start feeling uncomfortable. They would feel his insecurity, and they would kind of go, yeah, don't call us, we'll call you, kind of thing. Well, I had a coaching session with him about this, and see, the issue wasn't that he had bills to pay or any of that stuff. The issue was that when he hit that point in the conversation, he just had some old uncomfortable beliefs and feelings coming up that looked like there was more to it than thought, right? It looked like there was more to it than that. So I coached him around this in front of the audience. He had some insights. Mamoon, he made more money in the next 3 weeks than he'd made in the whole previous year. He signed up 2 clients on 10 grand packages because all of a sudden he was putting his attention on the client rather than on his own feelings. Mm-hmm. He was putting his attention on cultivating that connection and that feeling of closeness with the client, instead of trying to figure out how to get him on a packet, whatever it was that was going through his head. So it looks to me like the thing that becomes, and actually this was pivotal for me when I was first starting out. I used to find anything that looked anything like sales really uncomfortable. I didn't like it, to the point where if I had a conversation scheduled with a prospective client, I found myself hoping they would cancel so I didn't have to have the call. Now, here's the thing. Thinking about it as a business owner, you're trying to grow your business, you're trying to make money, but if you're hoping that your sales conversations don't happen, well, that's not going to work, right? But so I just figured, I muddled through as best I could. And then one day I realized what it was. And what it was this: I realized that relationship was what was important to me. And it wasn't, the thing that was getting in the way was I thought that something I was doing might screw up the relationship, but I didn't know that was what going on. So I just made the decision. I said, you know what? Relationship's what matters to me. So here's the funny thing. When I'm speaking to a prospective client, if I want to work with them, and I'm getting ready to propose a package, I'll say to them, I would love to work with you. I'm really excited about what you do. I would love to work with you. I'll tell you what I've got in mind. And either it'll be a good fit for you or it won't. If it's a good fit for you, great, we'll work together. And if it's not, well, so be it. But like, I'm not pretending to be, I'm not playing hard to get or anything like that. I'm totally cards on the table. But it's clear that relationship is what matters to me. And so people kind of get that, and they're like, oh, okay, thank you. And it's fine. So the reason I mention that is I've found for a lot of coaches, when they see that distinction, that actually relationship is what matters to them, and that's a priority for them, it allows them to be just real and authentic. Because oftentimes if you stop and think about it, Mamoon, a lot of our role models for what sales look like has come from, bad used car salesmen and double glazing salesmen and that kind of thing. And so a lot of people don't have that many good reference experiences for what high impact enrollment looks like and sounds like and feels like. And so they have these ideas. That's why when I interviewed Nick, my client, for everyone, it was shocking to people, because it wasn't, a process. He's actually really good at sales, by the way. So it wasn't me trying to get one over on him or anything. It was just an exploratory conversation, building that relationship, getting present on what those results that really mattered to him were, and then figuring out how I could help him. So I think the relationship piece is really, really important.
Beautiful. Beautiful. It's really mind quietening. I'm running out of things to ask you. I'm like, wait, okay. It all comes from within. It all comes from within. You get insecure. It's coming from within. It's a misperception. And that's what neediness is. It's the misperception that the other person can cause your feelings. And you go to a conversation that way, of course, they're going to be like, nope, don't want to work with you. And a beautiful experiment, by the way, a beautiful idea to just interview one of your clients who signed up to one of your packages and just be like, hey, tell everybody else what it was like. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Are there any other, well, let me ask you this. I've asked every speaker this, and I've never known what they were going to say, and I've loved it every time. So I'm going to ask you, as we're kind of coming towards wrapping up here, what would you recommend for coaches as some kind of a regular or even daily practice that just makes it inevitable that by doing this regularly, it makes it all but inevitable that they'll grow their business and become a lot more financially successful?
Well, the number one thing from my perspective is you got to be having conversations with people. And in those conversations, you got to be listening for what's going on for this person. And if they say something that sounds like something you might be able to help them with, you got to ask them, hey, you say, hey, I've got some experience of that kind. Like all the time, I'm speaking to coaches who are trying to build their business or trying to, move to a higher income bracket or trying to get clients, and they'll tell me what's going on for them. I'm like, well, I've got a bunch of experience with that. Would you like some support with that? And if they say no, I'm like, cool. If they say yes, I'm like, okay, let's schedule an enrollment conversation. We'll find out, or, let's have a chat. So you got to be having those conversations. And I, while there's all kinds of other things that might be helpful, I think anything that's putting distance between you and having conversations is going to slow it down. Like, I know there are all kinds of funnels people can build and blogs people can write and that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, if you're having, a bunch of conversations each day, you're going to be signing up clients. And if you're not, you're not. Like it's pretty much that simple. You got to be having conversations.
Brilliant. Beautiful. So simple, so intuitive. I love it. Awesome. All right. So now I know you've got cool stuff. I know you've got this thing called the Thriving Coaches Blueprint, and you've got other cool stuff. So if I am a coach and I want to be more rich and I want to do it based on some of the very intuitive, beautifully obvious, yet impactful things that you've been sharing, how do I get more from you? How do I hang out with you? How do I get your stuff?
Well, you can find me at jamiesmart.com and also on the Thriving Coaches podcast, where I do things like that interview with Nick and coaching demos and that sort of thing. But specifically for people listening to this webinar, if you pop an email to support@jamiesmart.com and just put Thriving Coaches Roadmap in the subject line, or say, Jamie, send me the roadmap, I'll send you the roadmap that we use to help coaches build a thriving coaching practice. And I'll also send you a recording, funnily enough, that you mentioned the Thriving Coaches Blueprint, which is like a program I take coaches through. There's a module of that about money, and I'll send you that as well. So you can check that out for yourself, whether you want to do the full program or not. That'll just help you start to tweak your understanding of money. So yeah, support at JamiesMart.
And if you look below this video, you should be able to see the email address and the subject line.
Beautiful.
And awesome. Thank you so much, Jamie. This has been fantastic. This is the real deal. This is the understanding that has had the biggest impact on my life from everything I've ever learned in the whole field of personal development and coaching. This is also the thing that I teach. I call it the psychological switch because I like giving things cool names, but principles behind clarity. It's the same principle, and Jamie's the person that introduced me to it. And yeah, it's our mission. It's certainly my mission. I'm pretty sure it's your mission to just get this out into the world as much as possible. It's like
absolutely
100%. So thank you for being here and for sharing this with all the coaches out there. I once heard, I think I heard, yeah, this was definitely you. This had to be you. This had to be you. I once heard this described as, this is as far beyond neuro-linguistic programming as NLP was beyond like old school traditional Freudian therapy.
Yeah.
And I was like, ooh, and being somebody trained in NLP, I was like, oh, what's that? It's a new technique. Let me go learn it. And then I had the conversation with you and discovered it. And I was like, oh, this is better than all the techniques I've ever learned put together.
Well, and as you know, I was a very well NLP trainer when I first came across this understanding, and the impact that I was having with people with this understanding had me walk away from the field of NLP, a field I still have huge love and respect for, but I was like, oh, there's a level of impact. Here's why this is so relevant to coaches. If you stop and think about it, the impact you can have in your client's life is what they're paying for. And the other thing that I see, Mamoon, if people want to raise their billings, raise your impact. If you can have a bigger impact, people will pay you more.
Totally. And I got to say here, like, that thing is true. This is far beyond what I learned in neurolinguistic programming, and the before and after in my business. Like, because when I learned this stuff, I didn't learn it as like a business building technique. I learned it as how do I get myself to stop being depressed and freaking insecure all the time? That's what I learned it for. And when I discovered that, I obviously paused for a while. Like I continued doing coaching, but I didn't share it with people right away. I waited a few months before I shared it because I was like, I almost thought this is too good to be true. This had such a deep impact on me. I was concerned that maybe I just drank some weird Kool-Aid and now I'm like, well, what the heck is going on? But it's never gone away. It's still absolutely true because it's true. It's impersonally, and it's true for everyone all the time.
Yeah,
it's true as the law of gravity. That feeling always comes from thought, the principle of thought in the moment. And funnily enough, it's only after this that I started doing six figures as a coach.
Well, same here, actually.
Not through any sales techniques or funnels or whatever. No, just because the shift that happened for me was before if I talked to a client, I had all of these different tools I could use. And if I had some connection with the problem they were going through, then I'd be like, oh, maybe I can help you with that using one of these tools. And after getting this understanding, I didn't actually need any of those tools. And it wasn't like, if I've got some experience of what you've been going through, then I can help you. It's no matter what you've been through, I actually know I can help you because your experience is being created the same way mine is and the same way everyone else on the planet is. Yeah. And so now I can say to people without farting through my mouth, I can say to people, like, genuinely, this works. This is the real deal. This is going to change your life more than anything else you've ever done. And they're like, they kind of look at me like, well, I know you're telling the truth, which is weird because you're saying something that sounds totally unreasonable.
Yeah, right.
But it's
our guarantee is your life transformed or your money back, because it's such a transformational impact.
And no one has ever asked for their money back. Whenever I'm teaching this, no one ever, like, the first program I created was a spiritual training program called Instant Ihsan, which is the Arabic word for like spiritual excellence. No one ever asked for a refund on that program. Like, and we sold a lot of copies, right? But it was just like, we had one of those guarantees, but Yeah. And that speaks to just how deeply impactful and powerful this is. And what you're going to get is a lot more than becoming a thriving coach, which is a wonderful result people will get, but you'll get a lot more. You'll get you'll thrive, full stop.
Yeah, it's thriving in every sense of the word.
Beautiful. Yeah. So go learn from Jamie, get all of his stuff. It's the best thing you'll ever do for yourself. And I think a lot of coaches, part of the reason we get so into coaching is because we love all of the things that help us and that benefit us, and we want to share them with people. This will help you more than anything that I've ever come across in my life.
Oh, thanks, man. That's a very kind recommendation.
Yeah, it sounds like I'm making it up. I'm like so overselling it, but it's like, dude, it's actually the real deal. Yeah. So yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Jamie. Thanks, you for sharing your message with the world and for introducing me to this incredible transformational understanding.
Oh, you're so welcome. I love what you're doing with it.